All right, guys, Matthew 23. We are at verse 8. So we're kind of, let me start this over, I guess. We're talking about when faith is practiced simply for an audience. We're considering what it looks like when our faith is nothing more than a show. It was a problem in the first century. It's something Jesus addressed quite often. And I believe if we're honest, it's a problem that has always existed with people. On one hand, in our hearts and in our minds, we want to do good. We want to be more focused. We want to be the very best that we can be. But in our life, it doesn't always work out. Uh, and honestly, I kind of think there's a difference between that and what we're talking about here. Because if I'm sincerely trying and want to do better and failing miserably at it, is that this kind of hypocritical putting on a show for everyone else? I don't think it is. Because sincerely, your heart's in it. At least you want to be there. At least you want to be this better person. When Jesus addresses the scribes and Pharisees repeatedly, and I'm telling you, chapter 23, Jesus gets really hard on these guys. Um, because for them, it wasn't just a matter of we're trying to live our faith, we're trying to follow God, we're trying to follow the rules and do the best we can. For them, it was we want to make sure everybody thinks we're really good. We want to make sure that they think really highly of us. We want the reputation. We want the respect. We want the authority that comes with it. We just don't want to actually do it. And that problem can really plague us even today. Because if we're not careful, that's what faith will devolve into. Is it's we're just kind of going through the motions and putting on a show for everyone else. I mean, I'm not saying we're being hypocritical, but like when we walk into a building, into the church building, and somebody says, "How you doing?" and we say, "I'm fine," and we're not really. Uh, what do you think about that?
Everybody will, does that have it right there? Well, I just don't want to bother people. Nobody wants to hear about my
I went to a conference one time and that was what they were discussing. And they said that fine is an F word and you don't want to say that because it's not pretty. They said what you say is A, B, C, or D. I'm a C today. And they, or I'm an A, which is a good day. But, if you're a B, it's so-so. If you're a D, you're flunking. But you never say fine because that's bad.
Yeah. I was psychologists always say that if a person says I'm fine, they're anything but fine. Now I don't know how accurate that is, but apparently there's a lot of research behind it that proves that to be true.
Fine is a good thing because we're not dead in the bed.
A lot of time people ask being polite, but they don't really want to know.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of truth in that because I tell people sometimes, how are you doing? And if I'm fine, I'm like, really? You can be honest with me. I genuinely want to know if you're okay.
Jeff.
But then it would take a lot of time. Yeah, that's true. Go ahead, Barbara.
I tell people don't ask an old person, how are you? Because you don't want a list.
Because you don't want a list. Yeah.
You're weak. We don't want to think we're weak, but we don't want to realize that we are weak. Yeah.
Like you said, hey, I've had a Percocet in 2 days. Go me. Sometimes that is fine, but that doesn't mean it's great.
Yeah.
Or maybe we think we're complaining if we tell people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me, guys.
Okay, I'm dealing with whatever it is, but I'm not at the point where I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Further than that, or I'll really not be fun.
I don't know.
Hold me over.
You can bring me a pill.
He brought enough for everyone.
Guys, I bring that up because a lot of times that's really kind of how we deal with things like this topic. Faith for an audience. We're just putting on a show. It's hypocritical. We're just going through the motions, but our heart's not in it. As Christians, we do struggle with things. We struggle to be 100% honest with how we're feeling. We struggle to really be 100% in it. I'm truly reading my Bible as much as I should, praying as much as I should, trying to fix the things that's going wrong in my life as much as I should. We all struggle with those things, but I don't think they're hypocritical in the same sense that of what Jesus is talking about here. And I want to make that point up front. We're human beings and we're going to struggle with things at times. There's going to be days when I'm just not doing my best. I haven't really been putting in the effort the way I should have been. That doesn't mean my heart's not in it. That doesn't mean that somehow today I was more hypocritical than I should have been. It just means I'm human and there's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be days when my faith's really strong and I'm there. There's going to be other days when I'm not.
These guys would never have admitted that they screwed.
Absolutely. They were perfect in their own minds. Yeah. And I think that's important to remember, guys, because it's easy for us to just kind of equate, okay, I didn't do so well today. I'm a hypocrite. I think there's a big difference between a hypocrite and a Christian who's struggling. And we're all going to be that Christian who struggles at times. But the hypocrite, that's what these scribes and Pharisees were. And that's why Jesus gets so harsh with them, because their facade was, I'm perfect. I've got it all together. You should be just like me. But underneath that facade was a heart that didn't really care one way or the other, that wasn't really making any effort. If we're making the effort, I believe it lines up with what John says in 1 John chapter 1. He says, if you're walking in the light means I'm trying. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I get it right all the time. But if you're walking in the light, there's always forgiveness. But for these guys, that's why Jesus repeatedly says, woe to the scribes and Pharisees, because they're putting on this show. So I start class tonight with that idea because it's easy for us to kind of struggle with separating these things. And I want to make sure that we do that.
So I help somebody the whole day. I've done this, you've done that, you've done that. You're just wore out. Writing about it's not right.
Mm-mm.
And that's another thing is, some of us might be tired or whatever from doing things like that. But if you go around writing about it, this is why my back's killing me.
Mm.
It wouldn't be right.
Well, and I get what you're saying, I just think we need to be careful that we don't just make. I spent the day helping a brother or sister, and I'm tired. I think it's okay to say I'm tired. I think it's okay to say I helped them all day. But when it becomes a source of pride, when it becomes, you're somehow less than me because you didn't do what I did. That's where the scribes and Pharisees were at. Is they held up this standard, and Jesus says, he called it they tie on heavy burdens on people's shoulders, but they refuse to carry it themselves. They're not really trying to live this stuff, but they expect everybody else to line up to this bar that they never attempted to get to. So when we get down to verse 8, Jesus really gets to the disciples, and he wants them to consider titles, roles, that desire to be the one in charge, the one with all the authority or respect. So somebody read verse 8. Let's go ahead and read verse 8 through 12. And I'll start us off with verse 8, and then somebody else read 9. We'll read down through 12. It says, "But you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers."
Although your Father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven.
Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ.
The greatest among you will be your servant, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
Thank you, guys. So is Jesus just correcting behavior here?
He's kind of setting, he's putting their heads on straight.
Putting their heads on straight. So I think he's correcting how they see themselves in relation to God and everyone else. Yeah. I mean, because it's important for us to consider, if because I sit up here and teach, I think I'm better than everyone else, then I'm not qualified to teach anymore. I'm not qualified to be an example to anyone else or to teach them. And that's why he says, none of you should want that title of the teacher, the teacher. And that's important, not just a teacher, because many of us are teachers. Many of us have taught classes. Many of us continue to teach classes. It's not wrong to have that title. So what's he really saying here? You're not to be called rabbi or teacher, for you have one.
These are the guys that were arguing amongst themselves who was the greatest. And then at the Last Supper, they were arguing, that we would never betray you. Who is it? Who do you think he's talking about? He's not talking about me.
Mm. Yeah. So when we consider, I shouldn't elevate myself, and I think that's really what Jesus is saying here is, you're not to be that person who tries to elevate yourself above everyone else. You only have one teacher, really, and that's Jesus Christ. And anyone else is on an equal footing with you. Christ surely is elevated above us. He deserves to be, but we're all equals. And I love how simple he puts it. You're all brothers. Now, the Greek word here is anthropos. It means people in general. You're all brothers and sisters. And what I thought was, what does that really convey for us? We're all brothers and sisters. We should act like it. We should see each other as equals. There's no competitors here. This is not a ladder where some people are standing higher up and some people are lower down. Now, we know, sibling rivalry. Those are real things. You have brothers and sisters who compete for, who's the best. But that's exactly what Jesus is arguing against, is that whole sibling rivalry played out in a church setting, in a spiritual sense. We're a family. We're level with each other because every single one of us answers to the same person. You don't answer to me, even though as one of the elders, I have a responsibility to shepherd. And scripture literally says, I'll give an account for your soul. That's huge, scary.
You're supposed to give like double honor.
Those who serve well. It says give them honor. It doesn't say they should demand honor. And I think that's the difference.
Family, got a family of 10 kids, and one of them decides he's the most special. The other 9 will inform him pretty quickly that he's not. And that's the kind of family dynamic you've got to have.
I think that's why it worked out so badly for Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, his dad showed it, had him as the favorite, gave him special gifts over all the other ones. He was the youngest, but he was the favorite, and the other brothers hated him for it.
Well, he kind of threw it back in the faces saying, I had agreed.
But you're not going to bow down to me. And, well,
He didn't help.
well,
Didn't help at all.
no, I didn't help at all. Sibling rivalry has a way of getting out of hand, and the competition, all it does is hurt us. But you see that playing out in church so often, where either you're the one that everybody thinks is better and everybody's trying to be you, or you're the one at the bottom feeling like you're not good enough, trying to be better. And I don't think either place has a place within the church. We're equals. No one here is better than anyone else. You might have been a Christian a lot longer than me. You might have a whole lot more experience than me. And because of that, I'll be respectful and I'll listen to anything you want to share, and I'll try my best to learn from it, because you will have a lot of wisdom, real life learned wisdom that I need, all of us will need. But that still doesn't make you better. It makes you different. Maybe that's the better word, is we're different. We've all got different backgrounds. We've experienced different things. We're coming from different parts of the country. I mean, most everybody in this room, very few of us are actually born and raised here. Nona, I think, was from here. Betty, Nancy, Kathy. Most of us didn't. You know, I came from about 3 hours north of here. I know Rick's from Virginia or West Virginia. It's Virginia, right? Yeah. Jim and Judy, Texas. George, I know he was born in Panama City. So, I mean, we're from all
Later, I was gone.
Kevin's from Minnesota, New Hampshire. We had somebody here recently that was from Minnesota. Anyway,
See, this don't catch us in Michigan.
Michigan, that's what I was thinking, Michigan. The truth is we all come from very different backgrounds. It doesn't make us better. We've all been in the faith a lot longer or shorter than each other. It doesn't make us better. It makes us different. And that's really what Jesus is getting at here is you're all on level, equal footing here. But then he keeps going. He says, don't call anyone your father on earth. You have one Father in heaven. Now, what in the world does he mean by that?
My daddy took it. We could not call him father. We could call him dad or daddy or Paul, but he said, do not call me father.
Mm.
And I don't know if that was right or not, but we respected.
Jesus is talking in spiritual sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
Once you see that kind of control with somebody, you got a problem.
Did you say the capitalization matters?
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting.
But you also have
Okay. So in this time, Father, yeah. So And I think Kevin's on the right track here is that this term teacher and this term father and this term instructor, these are titles actually. These are not really relationship kind of connections because we're all going to have teachers. We're either going to be a teacher or we're going to be the student. It's just, that's life. That's Christianity, really. We're all going to have instructors, people who, let me clarify this. What's the difference between a teacher and an instructor?
Nothing. I think it's just a title. It's like when you're in school, you don't call teacher anything but his or her, Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. You don't say father or whatever, teacher. And Catholic too.
Teacher gives you the book, work, instructor shows you how to do it. College.
That's pretty much true.
Okay.
The instructor gives you facts and the teacher gives you the nuances surrounding the work.
Okay. Do you know the Greek word is actually different here? Even though in our minds, teacher and instructor are almost synonymous with one another, the word teacher is didaskalos. Didaskalos. It's almost the same term as deacon. It's someone who serves and helps, someone who's teaching to kind of help you come along. But the word instructor here literally means to lead. Yeah. It is Matthew 23:10. It says, neither be called instructors, masters. Okay.
I got it backwards. Not to be flip it over.
The Greek word is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It starts with a K though, but it means to lead, to bring along. So it's more than just teaching the concepts, the ideas. It's that person who says, come on, we're going, and they take you with them. Yeah.
Where does, like, I know they always called you rabbi too,
Mhm.
that mean teacher?
It does mean teacher, yes. So when Jesus says, don't be called teacher, don't be called father, don't call each other leader or instructor, or Kathy said master. That's the old King James, New King James, Revised Standard Version. Same in the King James. 3 times Jesus points to the title and the person who's chasing that title. And first, he doesn't want us chasing the title. And I think that's important to remember is he doesn't want us chasing the title for the title itself. To be that person in charge, looked up to, the person that everybody tries to emulate. We have one person we should be striving to emulate. That's Jesus Christ. We have one person who truly teaches us, who truly leads us. That's Jesus Christ. We're going to fill those roles in a lesser degree in life, but we're not supposed to chase that title, that reputation, that respect. Jesus is not trying to strip away the meaning of these terms. Like, I fathered 3 children. Technically, I'm their father. But there's a big difference between, the legitimacy of the father or your father, my father, and the title, and striving to have that title.
What's the difference then with Abba?
Abba is the Aramaic for the word father.
Well, I've always heard it referred to as daddy.
Yeah, it's actually, I would say that's pretty accurate actually, because it's a very family term, loving family relational term. So what he's stripping away is the idea that we can claim that honor by just having that role. And Jesus says that there's only one person who truly holds that honor. The rest of us don't. We're on equal footing. We were never meant to be in first place. Jesus is. Now, what that means is I'm not the source of this. Even for the church here, I'm not the source of what makes this church good. Jesus is. We do as a group, as a family, before class, listening to the way that we interact with each other and joke around, and it's indicative of that's family. We're close enough to one another that we can be a little snarky, and we can joke around with one another. And if we didn't really know one another well enough, we wouldn't do that. It would be very formal. And I've been to a lot of groups, churches where everything was very formal. There was no relationship, and you could tell there was no real relationship there. I appreciate the relationship there because it puts us, not only does it draw us closer together, but it recognizes, hey, we're all in this together. Me and George are joking around about, age before class. He was talking about in 1980s, and I'm like, I was like 12 then. That's exactly what he said.
Shut up.
And just that joking around, I think that gets closer to what Jesus is wanting for the church than anything else. Because church should be family. And when one of us starts trying to elevate themselves above everyone else, suddenly there becomes this formal hierarchy that this person's higher than I am, and this person's higher than I am, and this person's higher than I am.
Either that or you get brought down real quick.
Either that or you get brought down right quick. Absolutely.
In a system where a bunch of people are ceding power to one person, and that person is trying to get more and more of it. It's kind of like, Catholicism. That's just toxic.
It really destroys the heart of what New Testament Christianity is supposed to be about. Because we're supposed to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and founder of our faith. We're supposed to seek to be like him. We shouldn't be looking to one another for that example, nor should we be elevating one another to that position. But more importantly, I can't seek that elevation. I can't be the guy that's trying to be the most respected, the teacher, the instructor. As Christians, we're responsible for pointing one another toward the one who is. And that's ultimately what our job is my responsibility is to help you get there to Jesus. And your responsibility is to help me get there. I'm not the standard. You're not the standard. That's why none of us are the teacher, the instructor. None of us are the father. As one person put it, we're simply one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. And that really does kind of put things in its proper perspective. Somebody read verse 11 for us again.
He that is greatest among you shall be your servant.
How does that make any sense? The greatest among you shall be your servant. So it's a humility thing. Does that not go against everything in our understanding of life and relationships and hierarchy? And I mean, it just it conflicts with everything that we were brought up to think.
What's bigger or do better than the Joneses?
Yeah. And, in a world where everything's about climbing the ladder, everything is about trying to make more money, have more. it's hard to comprehend what Jesus says here. The greatest among you shall be your servant. Now, the word servant here is an interesting word. I mean, it literally means a bondservant, a slave. In Here's something that was always humbling for me is most often in the Middle Ages, the word servant was translated minister. Yeah, literally that's what the word minister means. It is a servant. Same thing as a deacon. It's a servant. Jesus says that's the person who should get the most respect, is the one who's serving, the one who is humble, the one who is trying to help everyone else, the one who is busy pointing to everyone else and everything else, not the one who's seeking the reputation and recognition for themselves.
So the same word as doulos.
It actually, let me just look to make sure, but it's a derivative. So this is the noun diakonos. It just means servant or to serve. It means servant, the noun. Doulos would be more a verb. Yeah. But the idea is really important. Greatness doesn't mean the corner office, the head of the table, the name everybody knows. Jesus says the actual measure runs in the opposite direction. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time, and I still have a hard time wrapping my head around that. And I'm gonna be absolutely honest. It doesn't make sense.
Jimmy and I were talking the other day about the hospital and how everybody thinks the doctors are top of but you take away the lower levels, the housekeeping, the CNAs. I don't care what the doctor does, the hospital falls apart. And that's the servants are the ones that clean your room and make sure everything is germ free and all, it's not the head behind. And that's what was going through my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example of exactly what we're talking about. What makes a church really function?
I'll figure out how to use a phone here in a minute.
I feel like every time I figure it out, they change it.
Everybody working together.
Everybody working together. That's what makes it work. There are no unimportant roles. And most of the time, it's the women behind the scenes that make a church work.
I've heard an innumerable number of preachers say without the women, I'd be talking to a wall.
The churches wouldn't function. I mean,
Wouldn't function.
what was that?
Households wouldn't.
Households wouldn't. My hearing's not so great, so I'm not going to tell you what I thought you said. That's why I'm like, what? The point is, the person who's serving the most quietly, the one nobody thanks up front, the one who shows up and does unnoticed again and again and again, that's the person that God calls great. Not because they're overlooked, but because their service says everything about who they are. And ultimately, that really does kind of get to the point of what Jesus is saying here. Is if my goal is to just be looked up to, that says everything about my heart. If my goal is to make everyone else better and to just make sure things get done, that says everything about my heart and my faith. Because what's in here really does come out in how we behave. That's why Jesus says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. I get the impression, now this is my personal impression from reading scripture for years and years and years, that not only does it say God will humble those who have exalted themselves and will exalt those who have humbled themselves, I feel like God takes pleasure in that, lifting up the person who's humbled themselves, but also in pulling down that person who thinks they're better than everyone else. I think God takes pleasure in that. I think God actively is involved in putting people in their place.
Without them doing half the arrogant, don't have a chance.
Yeah. So this exalted and humbled, being the servant, not seeking the title and reputation, that really does get to the heart of who Jesus was. Because if he had wanted that role, if he had sought that respect and notoriety, he could have had it. He had every right to have it, really, but he didn't seek that. Jesus was more likely to be found with the sinners, with the tax collectors, the people that society had kind of written off. He wasn't seeking to be sitting in the temple on the throne. In fact, a couple of times they wanted to actually take Jesus by force and make him king. And he quickly put an end to that. This really does kind of get to the heart of what we struggle with. Because let's be honest, there's a part of us that at times have struggled with wanting to be more well known. There's a part of us that have always kind of, that whether we want to admit it or not, have struggled with wanting to be looked up to and respected. To be that person that everyone really thought was great at this, whatever this was. But we've also been the one who has struggled with never being recognized, never really being named. I'd say that probably comes closer to hitting more people here than the opposite did. Jesus says, most importantly, God sees you. He says your work, your labor in the Lord is never in vain. And that if you humble yourself and serve, that he will exalt you. I don't know exactly what that means, other than he lifts us up. It might happen in this life, it might happen in the next. I don't know exactly how he does that or when he does that, but I can tell you one thing for sure. God doesn't respect that person who's always trying to put everyone else down and be better than them. In fact, he says, I'll humble them. But to the humble, to the servant, to the one who's truly doing this from their heart, God says, I'll exalt them. So if greatness in God's eyes looks like quiet, unnoticed service, what would it look like for us to genuinely let go of needing to be recognized? Isn't that a hard question?
Hey, Jeff,
Go
why,
ahead.
why are we're considered Christian? Uh, why are we not considered disciples? And when did the term Christian come about?
Okay. So the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. That's Acts 20, something like that. Somebody look that up. Because I cannot think of it right off my hand. Acts 11, verse 26. That's one of the reasons why I like having my tablet here. I've got access to all my books, all my searches. I can look things up really quickly. Greek, Hebrew, all that stuff. So why are we not called disciples? I think we should be disciples. I think we should call ourselves disciples. The term Christian came about as a way of referring to Christ followers, those who strive to follow the Christ. But ultimately, in a bigger sense, we are disciples. And I think it would help us to actually be a little more humble about if I'm a disciple and you're a disciple of the Christ, what does that mean? We're equals. There's no place in Christianity for hierarchy in the sense of one person better than another. There's one person that we should look up to, Jesus Christ. There's one person we should strive to emulate, Jesus Christ.
Sometimes I think too, our mind, because we were raised in certain families, our mind makes us feel certain ways.
So,
You know, how you taught things by parents or kids or whatever. Working in the nursing profession, I always tried to see where an individual came from that end up, say, being a drug abuser or end up in a situation that something happened to them. You know, I tried to let people talk things out so I could understand them a little better.
because, what Nancy brings up is an interesting extension to this conversation of, this inferiority complex where the way you were raised and the way you were taught made you always feel inferior to everyone else, or the opposite, this superiority complex where the way you were raised and the way you were taught made you feel better than everyone else. Jesus says, in the overall scheme of things, there's only one who's truly better. There's only one that we should truly look up to as better. We're on equal footing here. We're brothers and sisters. There's no ladder here. There's no one here that's better. But I think it gets more to the heart of the issue than just the title. Because remember where we started with this lesson talking about that small town pecking order where, everybody knows who's, at the top, everyone knows who's at the bottom, everybody knows who is supposed to be looked up to, everybody knows who is kind of from the other side of the tracks kind of thing. We've all struggled with the seat we hoped would be ours, the name that we wish, we had that carried a little more weight or a little more authority. And Jesus doesn't really say that we should stop caring altogether, like the ache itself is the problem. That's not really the point. He tells us where to actually settle it. You have one teacher, one father, one instructor. And the seat that matters most in the kingdom isn't the one at the head of the table. It's the one taken by whoever's willing to serve without needing anybody else to notice.
Instead of seating yourself at the head of the table, you used to ask the person who invited you, where would you like for me to sit? Because it's kind of like you're humbling yourself, not trying to take the place of the person who had the activity going on.
Yeah. Guys, one thing to remember is God never keeps score the way we kind of keep score with things. And that's really hard for me because it goes against how we think and feel. But God doesn't keep score. He sees the quiet person that's faithfully serving from the heart that nobody else notices. And he says that person's great because it's a true extension of their heart, what's in here. And I think that's really what Jesus wants us to consider is, what's in your heart? Why are you seeking that position? Why are you seeking to be recognized? Why are you wanting to be the teacher? Is it to be a servant? Then if that's true, there's nothing wrong with being that servant and quietly serving and teaching and trying to help other people. But if you're seeking that position just for the position, the authority, the responsibility of everybody else looking up to you, that says more about you than it does anything else. Next week, we're going to kind of watch Jesus sit down in the temple, and he's going to point out somebody that no one else is watching. And literally, he's going to talk about the fact that that person is actually doing more than everyone else. And it's the person nobody else noticed. I would contend it's the person that even the disciples didn't notice. I'm not going to tell you more than that about what the lesson is going to be about. But I do want you to think about that. You know, what motivates us? How do we see ourselves? How do we see those around us? Jesus is very specific here. He wants us to be the servant. He wants us to be the person that truly cares and tries to help other people, not being the one looked up to.
Solomon put it best, and be careful what you ask for. It's much wisdom and much sorrow.
Mm.
He asked for wisdom. He got it. It overwhelmed him at some point. He got arrogant about it. He got caught.
Mm.
Ecclesiastes is not exactly the happiest book I've ever read.
It is not. I think the book of Ecclesiastes can be quite dark at times.
Look at some, see her emotional state at times.
Yeah,
Got the best of them.
absolutely. Very good points. Guys, thank you for your time. I hope it was a good class. Next week, we'll continue and thinking about this same topic, but from a different passage and a different perspective. So with that, let's have a word of prayer and we will be dismissed.